Thank you. So I will go ahead and get started. Greetings to all, and I'm one of the leads of the local capacity development cross-cutting team within the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems at the University of Florida. This and the next 5 seminars are all funded by the Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems in collaboration with the University of Florida George S. Mathers Libraries. Today's webinar on Introduction to Research Impact is part of the live webinar series on maximizing your research impact. These webinars will share information on free tools and resources available online that can help increase your visibility as a researcher, as well as reach larger audiences. Future webinars will also involve some hands-on activities that will help you follow the instructor to access a resource, online resource to set up your account, to sign in, and so on. Next slide, please. Today's and future webinars will be led by Dr. Terry Kit Selfe, who is the Translational Research and Impact Librarian at the University of Florida. Dr. Selfe is an experienced clinical investigator with specific expertise in the planning and execution of clinical trials involving mind-body therapies for chronic conditions related to aging and stress. She received a Doctor of Chiropractic degree from Palmer College of Chiropractic, a PhD in Educational Research from the University of Virginia, as well as completed a National Institutes of Health funded postdoctoral fellowship in clinical research at the University of Virginia's Center for the Study of Complementary and Alternative Therapies. Now, before I turn over to Dr. Selfe, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. Please type your name, position, institution, email, and country in the chat. We would like to capture that information and to also see where you're coming from. Recording and PowerPoint slides will be available for these and future webinars on the Livestock Systems Innovation Lab's website. We will continuously post the link to that webpage in the chat. Please use chat for questions and comments. For this introductory webinar, we are not taking questions that you can ask by unmuting your mic. So we will be only accepting the questions through the chat. But in future webinars, we will explore opportunities to let you ask questions yourself directly. So now I would like to turn this to Dr. Selfe. The stage is yours.
Thanks, Nargiza. So I'm happy to be working with you on this series. Today's session, I'm going to just start by introducing you to some of the metrics that are commonly used to measure research impact and provide you with some tips on things you can do to improve your own impact. The latter topics, those I'm just going to touch on here because we're going to be covering those in more depth in upcoming webinars. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video while I'm going through the slides, and then I'll come back on when we get to the section where we'll be doing questions and answers. Okay, so what am I even talking about with research metrics? There are some standard metrics, and they tend to be based on how often something was cited. They can be categorized according to what they're being used to measure. For example, if you're interested in the impact of a particular article, you'd look at item level metrics like citation count. There are also metrics that reflect the impact of a researcher's body of work. An example of that type of metric would be the H index. And finally, there are some journal level metrics. The most commonly talked about is the journal impact factor. And we're going to look at all of these a little more closely. So as I stated, the citation count is an item level metric, and it's just as the name implies, it's the count of the number of times an item like a journal article was cited by other items. And that is specific to the database, by which I mean it's how many times it was cited by other articles in that database. That being the case, the citation count for the same article can vary from one database to the next. And I'll be demonstrating that in the examples I show you. There are a number of databases that report this metric, and we're going to be looking at 4 of them here. So here we're looking at a record for an article in the Dimensions database. And this is from their free version, and it's available to all. In Dimensions, the citation count is labeled total citations. And you can see this article was cited 135 times. And again, this is by other articles in the Dimensions database. In the Web of Science database, which is not a free database, but if you are affiliated with UF, you have access to this. In Web of Science, the metric is just labeled citations, and the same article that we looked at in the previous slide, in Web of Science, it has 127 citations. And that is by other articles in the Web of Science core collection. In Google Scholar, they call the citation count cited by, and again, same article. This was cited by 180 other articles in Google Scholar. And if your institution doesn't subscribe to Web of Science, you can use Google Scholar to find the Web of Science count. You can see they provide that as well. And it was 127, which is what we saw when we actually looked it up in Web of Science. And the final database example I want to show you is Scopus. In the right-hand column of this article record, it shows that the article was cited by 128 documents in Scopus. But knowing this raw number doesn't really tell you much. Is 128 a high number of citations, a low number, somewhere in between? In Scopus, they provide some context for the score. And you can see toward the bottom of this screenshot, it shows you that being cited 128 times places this article in the 98th percentile, or the top 2% of articles in Scopus. Which leads me to talk about another type of item level metric that goes beyond just a simple count. And it compares the citation performance to other articles in the same field or of a similar age or from the same funder. These metrics have names like field-weighted citation impact and category normalized citation impact. These normalized metrics are particularly useful if your work is being evaluated by researchers from other fields. And that happens frequently at academic institutions where promotion and tenure packets go to committees with members from all across campus. So for the normalized metric, the number itself indicates whether it's high or low for your field. One example of this type of metric is the field citation ratio, or FCR. And this can be found in the dimensions database. The FCR is normalized to 1.0, meaning an article with an FCR of 1.0 has been cited an average number of times. An FCR above 1.0 has more citations than average, and an article with an FCR below 1.0 has a lower than average number of citations. So where was I? So for the FCR dimension, okay, am I unmuted now? Can y'all, can
Yes.
somebody not? Okay,
Yes.
thanks. So yeah, the FCR in dimensions is comparing the article to other articles in the same subject area and of a similar age. And on this slide, I included their definition in this little inset so that you've got that to refer back to when you have the slide deck. So one thing I like about dimensions is, in addition to giving you the number, they also give you a verbal description of what that means, how to interpret that. So in this example, they've given an FCR of 24.71. And then they explain in text that compared to other publications in the same field, this publication is extremely highly cited and has received approximately 24 times more citations than average. So even for someone who's not familiar with how to interpret the normalized metric, they describe it for them, which can be really helpful. And dimensions gives another metric normalized to 1.0, and that's the relative citation ratio. This metric is comparing the article to other articles in the same subject area that were funded by the US National Institutes of Health. And it's, as a normalized statistic, it's interpreted the same way. So an RCR of 5.5 means this article has roughly 5 times more citations than other articles, in this case, resulting from NIH-funded studies. And remember, as with all of these metrics, they are just looking at the other items in their database. So this is NIH-funded articles in the Dimensions database. And Scopus also has a normalized metric, and it's called the field-weighted citation impact metric. This one takes into account the subject area, the year of publication, and the document type. And for this same article that we've been looking at that had an RCR of 24.71, FCR of 24.71, and an RCR of 5.5 in Dimensions, this has a field-weighted citation impact of 6.91. So those are the item level metrics that I wanted to talk about. Now we're going to move on to the author level metrics. And probably the most well-known is the H index. It incorporates the number of publications and the number of citations for each. So the H index is the highest number of articles that you've published that have at least that number of citations. So as an example, an H index of 12 means you have 12 articles which have each been cited at least 12 times. The H index is intended to reflect both the quantity and quality of an author's publications in a single metric. So someone could have 150 publications, but if say they were each only cited 5 times, their H index would be 5. Conversely, someone could have only 5 publications that were each cited 150 times or more. Their H index would also be 5. And as an author level metric, you can use this to tell your scholarship narrative in promotion and tenure packets, grant applications, and similar items. This metric, again, is database specific, so your H index can be different in different sources. And we're going to look at some examples. Google Scholar profiles include the H index. And using my profile as an example, you see my H index in Google Scholar is 21, meaning I have at least 21 publications in Google Scholar that have each been cited at least 21 times. Scopus also provides an H index for authors, and this is accessible in their free version, Scopus Preview, and I've provided the URL for that in the slides if you want to play around with that. You can search the Scopus Preview by author name, or if you've got an ORCID ID, you can search by that. If you don't have an ORCID ID or you don't know what an ORCID ID is, we're going to be covering that in the next webinar. So this example, the H index displayed here in the left-hand column is 17 in Scopus. And if your institution subscribes to Web of Science, you can find your H index there as well. Again, it's searchable by name or ORCID ID. And in Web of Science, my H index is 16. So this is just to illustrate that the H index varies depending on the database you're using. For that reason, I suggest if you're using your H index in a report, include the source that you use to get that number. So don't just say I have an H index of 19, say that is from Google Scholar. And one note that I want to make about the H index is that it takes time to grow your number of publications and additional time for others to find and cite them. So your H index grows over the course of your career. That being the case, comparing H indexes of early career researchers to more established researchers tends to disadvantage the early career researchers. And that needs to be taken into account whenever you're using the H index. And now we're going to move on to journal level metrics, specifically the journal impact factor. This is a measure of the average number of citations to articles published in a journal over the past 2 years. And it's used to rank journals. Originally, it was developed as a way to help librarians that had finite budgets to spend on journals identify which were the more highly cited journals so they could factor that into their purchasing decisions. Now, the GIF is sometimes used as a proxy for journal quality. Basically, the more citations a journal has, the higher the GIF, and the more prestigious the journal is considered. Bear in mind, this is a journal level metric, and it should not be used to draw conclusions regarding the impact of any individual article that's published in that journal. That would require the use of an article level metric like the FCR or citation count. So why might a journal's impact factor be important to you? If you're in an academic environment where publishing is expected, generally publishing in a high impact journal carries more weight. And just from a purely practical standpoint, aside from the metrics, you want people to see and cite your work. So choosing to publish an article in a highly cited journal probably increases the visibility of your article. And of course, journals with high GIFs are by definition highly cited. And the official GIF is found in Insight's Journal Citation Reports, or JCR. And sometimes the journal website will also give their IF or JIF. You will see it referred to both ways. So Journal Citation Reports is available by subscription. And again, if you're a UF affiliate, you will have access to this. You can search for a particular journal by entering the title. In this case, veterinary research. And we want to see that particular record. And looking at the record, we can see the GIF is 3.699. But what does that mean? Is that high, low, average? You can scroll down in the record to see how that journal ranks. In this case, it ranks 7th out of 146 journal titles in the veterinary sciences category. It's in the top quartile, and it comes in at roughly 95th percentile, or the top 5% of journal titles for this category. So why is this context important? Why isn't just the raw GIF enough? Well, that's because the GIF varies widely by field. And this is a list of nursing journals, and they're sorted by impact factor, highest impact factor journal at the top. And you can see in nursing that highest impact factor journal has a GIF of roughly 5.8. Then you look at this list of journals in general and internal medicine, also sorted by GIF, and the highest impact factor journal in this category is over 91. So someone in this field might see a GIF of 3.699 very differently from someone in nursing or veterinary sciences. So again, when reporting a GIF, be sure to put it in the context so people unfamiliar with the field will know how to interpret the raw number. And back to veterinary sciences, just showing you the list and noting that the highest impact factor journal here has a GIF of roughly 12.6. And again, it shows that's in the first quartile and roughly that one is the highest GIF percentile. You can also go down and see, if you recall, the title we were looking at was veterinary research, which ranked 7th out of the 146 journals. And you can see the same stats we saw in the item record here. And if you don't have access to journal citation reports, as I mentioned, you can look at the journal website because they will sometimes give the GIF. They usually do if it's a selling point. And this example from Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine shows the impact factor of the journal is 3.456. They're pulling that impact factor from journal citation reports, which is the official source. And they go on to say that with this impact factor, that means this journal ranks in the top 5 sleep medicine journals, and the top journal focus on original research in clinical sleep medicine. So we've covered the kind of standard citation-based metrics. Now we're going to move on to alternative metrics. And as the cartoon here says, it's all very well making discoveries, saving lives, and improving the world, Roger, but your research is making barely any impact on social media. Well, there's a metric for that too. The altmetric attention score incorporates things like the number of times your article was mentioned on social media or covered in a news source. This differs from more traditional metrics in a couple of ways. It gives more immediate feedback about the interest in an article. And by quantifying the article's reach via popular news outlets, social media, it can reflect the impact the article's having beyond the academy. So a newly published article that hasn't been out long enough to have been cited in the scholarly literature might be getting a lot of attention in the popular press. And the altmetric information can help you capture this interest and gives you another way to document your impact. And this is what an altmetric record looks like. It gives the attention score in this colorful donut, and it's a weighted metric reflecting the relative reach of the different types of sources. And the record also shows the number of times the article was mentioned in the various sources. You see that listed underneath the donut. The altmetric record provides the Twitter demographics, and this might be useful in saying something about the international reach of your article. But I find the attention score in context information to be the most useful. Altmetric offers multiple ways of framing the score. They state how the article performs when compared to all those they track. For example, this article is in the 99th percentile for all articles. They also break it down and say how the article did relative to other articles from this particular journal and relative to all articles published within 6 weeks of this one. And finally, they also compare it to other articles published in the same journal around the same time. If you're using altmetric data to highlight the impact of an article, this is the type of information you want to include. Again, giving context as opposed to just reporting a raw score. And you can find altmetrics in the dimensions database. Again, it would be the free web app. And in dimensions, you can search for your name or your ORCID ID to find all of your publications. And the results list includes the little buttons to get to the altmetric record. And also in dimensions, you can sort your results by the altmetric attention score if you want to see the most impactful first. In this example, it's sorted by publication date. And you can see this most recent publication is too new to have any citations or altmetric data included. And then if you're in the actual article record in Dimensions, you see they give the altmetric donut, and you can click here to go to the altmetric record itself. And an option to searching for the publications in Dimensions, you can download the altmetric bookmarklet to your Firefox, Chrome, or Safari browser. And that lets you see the altmetrics for articles that you view on any web page that has a DOI and a proper metadata. To get this bookmarklet, you do have to have an institutional or organizational email address, not just like a Gmail address. And once you have the bookmarklet installed, you can see the altmetric information pop up when you click this little altmetric it button that has now been installed in your browser. As you can see in this is just an example of an article that I'm looking at in the actually in the publisher's website, and altmetrics pop-up appears. So talking about metrics, you should also know that there are concerns about the use of metrics to evaluate researcher performance. And this has led to some proposed guidelines regarding the responsible use of metrics. The Leiden Manifesto is one of the most cited. It was published in Nature in 2015, and it outlines 10 principles that should guide research evaluation. Some of the highlights include the idea that quantitative metrics shouldn't replace qualitative assessment. Researchers shouldn't be made to feel they have to abandon locally relevant research topics if they don't typically produce high metrics. The processes around data analysis need to be transparent and open, and those being evaluated need to be given the ability to verify the data that was used. The metrics need to account for variation by discipline. The systemic effects of assessment need to be recognized, and indicators should be scrutinized regularly and updated as needed. And the adage, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure, comes to my mind. If the number of publications is key to promotion and tenure, then researchers are going to try to maximize the number of publications that they produce. The problem is that can often occur at the expense of the quality of the publications. Okay, so we've covered the metrics. Now we're going to talk briefly about some of the things you can do to help manage and increase your impact. And again, much of this is going to be covered in more depth in upcoming webinars. So first off, you need to publish. Your research isn't going to have any impact if nobody ever knows about it. To aid you in writing high quality, citable articles, you can use reporting standards. These are guidelines that list the items that are expected to be included in an article reporting research findings for a particular study type. And they will typically include a checklist that you can use to make sure that you're covering all of the recommended content. To find reporting standards that are relevant to your needs, you can use the Equator Network. This is a great resource as it has reporting standards for a variety of study types all in one place. They currently, I just checked this morning, the current number is 499 different reporting guidelines available here. And you can see just from this main page, for randomized trials, you would look at the consort reporting standard. For observational studies, you would look at strobe, and so on. And then the Equator Network, beyond just telling you, okay, these are the reporting guidelines you should consider, they link out to the actual guidelines. And this, we're going to be talking about not the next session, but session after next. Okay, so now you've put a lot of time and effort into writing your articles. You want to make sure they count. So publish in journals that will reach your audience. Check to see whether the journal you want to publish in is indexed in a database that your audience uses. And if there are any metrics that you care about, make sure that the journal works for those. For example, if you want to publish in high impact factor journals, check to make sure that the journal has a GIF. Not all of them do. So first, check to see that it has a GIF and that it ranks where you want it to be. And another tip is that whenever you submit a manuscript to a journal for publication, include your ORCID ID, because that's going to make it easier to get the article added to your profile. And that's going to be the subject of the next session. And then as the number of your publications increases, you need to keep track of them. There are multiple researcher profiles available to do that. They all draw their information from different databases, so not all of your publications are going to be covered in each profile. You're likely going to need to use multiple profiles to track everything. However, in ORCID, you can enter all of your publications, but ORCID doesn't provide citation metrics. So you're going to have to use other sources for any metrics that you want to track. And if you find a source that you prefer for tracking your metrics, take that into consideration and publish in journals that are indexed in that database so that your new publications are contributing to the metrics you're pulling from that source. So to summarize, it's important that the quantitative indicators not replace the qualitative assessment of a researcher's work. We shouldn't reduce everyone to a number and rank them. Metrics need to be applied appropriately. You can use a GIF to say something about a journal's impact, but not an article's impact. It's important to remember that metrics can differ widely across fields, like I demonstrated with the GIF for nursing versus medicine. And be sure to provide context like where a score ranks when you're reporting non-normalized metrics. You can increase your impact by publishing high quality, citable work, and reporting standards can help with that, as can putting thought into where you publish and choosing journals that reach your audience and support any metrics that are important to you. Finally, keep up with your publications using multiple sources. And I've included a couple of slides that just listing the upcoming topics. And as you see, we're going to look at the ORCID ID in depth in the next session. And then the following two sessions are going to be focused on publishing journal articles. We'll also talk about where and where not to publish. And then we'll end the series with a session on managing your researcher profile. So I am happy to take any questions that you might have about what we have covered today. And I know Nargiza has been tracking the, following the chat. So if there are any questions there that you want me to address, or if
yes,
you...
Yes, Terry, there are a few questions, and
Okay.
let me read them loud. But before I do, thank you very much for the presentation and sharing information. I knew about some of the research metrics available online, but I never knew about altmetric. So that was new information to me.
Oh, good.
Okay, the first question is from our colleague in Nepal, Dr. Shrestha. He would like to know if there is any evidence regarding the relationship of number of publication / number of citation with the benefit envisaged that has the beneficiary groups actually received.
Not to my knowledge, but I will say that that isn't something that I've done a deep dive into. There may be something, but yeah, I don't know how evidence-based the use of research metrics is when they're being used to evaluate researchers, or when they're being used to evaluate the impact in the groups that the research is supposed to be trying to help. But I will say, in an academic environment, it does seem to be a fact of life, more so at some institutions than others. But for that reason alone, you know, for people that have to apply these things for promotion and tenure purposes, I think it's important to be familiar with the metrics.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. I'm moving to the next question.
Okay.
And this is from a colleague from Burkina Faso, Dr. Isidore Ignanda. He would like to know what makes a news source, he put newspaper, choose or opt from this or that index or type of impact. And I believe it's in relation to maximizing research.
I'm not sure I understand the question. When you say the news source, that makes me start thinking about altmetrics, which are the ones that are tracking news coverage.
I would, because we have a little bit of time, I would invite Dr. Nanda to unmute and maybe ask his question and clarify it. Isadora, can you please unmute and ask your question?
I see that there are different journals, scientific journal, communication journal, and they presented some the index, a lot of index, and maybe some index for the impact. And I don't know if some of them working about one or all the journal, or scientific journal have the best of choice to about one. And I don't know why journal have to what can the index or have to trace into, because it's the scientific journal or the publication journal or the media journal or the, I don't know what is my question. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So when you're talking about journals and where they're indexed, each database is going to have its own criteria for the journals it decides to include. And some of that is going to be based on subject matter. The journal databases that I was showing you tend to be kind of like the broader coverage, but then you've also got more specific databases, like there's one called PsycInfo, which covers journals that talk about psychology, psychiatry, some sociology. So those are going to be the only journals that they're really interested in. Whereas a database like CINAHL, which is Cumulative Index of Nursing and Allied Health literature, that, as the name implies, nursing and allied health journals. So what you can do for the different databases is they will typically provide a list of all of the journal titles that they cover. But I will say for many of them, the list is very, very long. So what you can do, and we'll talk about this in a future session, my recommendation is just if you've got a topic of interest and you want to see what journals are indexed in a database on that topic, just do a basic topic search in that database and pull up the list of journals that are publishing articles on your subject matter. And that will help you when you're trying to decide what journal do I want to publish in, and is that journal in the database that I want to use. So I hope that helps. There's not like a one set of guidelines that everyone uses to decide what journals they're going to cover.
Nargisa, you're muted.
I'm very sorry. Thank you, Terry. This was a very elaborate answer. I don't have any more questions, but I had a question that I would like to ask to address a question that may come from our students in our partner countries. Is I'm a student, I'm coming into the field, I'm maybe writing an article very soon to publish my work on thesis or on dissertation. I would like to, what would you recommend in terms of the metrics that I can start with?
So for someone who's at the kind of dissertation level, what we do here and what I've worked at other universities, and they've all done the same thing. The place to put the dissertation is in there's a database that is from ProQuest. It's dissertations, and you can have your dissertation put there, but more importantly, that's just like the initial step. I will say dissertations and theses tend to be less frequently cited than journal articles, particularly in the sciences. So what you want to do as quickly as possible is turn parts of your dissertation into journal articles. And that's something we will be touching on in a future webinar. But think about not only publishing your study findings as an article. That kind of almost goes without saying that you're going to do that. But you also might be able to, like on a traditional dissertation, you've got a whole chapter on your lit review. That chapter, you might be able to rework and turn that into a publication in a journal and get an article out of that. And review articles tend to be more highly cited than other article types. So that can help, like right from the start, you're already generating, for one, it's another tick. Yep, one more article. You're racking them up, but you're also, more importantly, making sure that your research that you put so much time and effort into is reaching as many people as possible.
Okay.
So does that help?
Yeah, that helped. And I hope in future webinars, we will be able to share a little bit more and also address some of shared tips with with the students who are coming in and will need to do a little bit more to start maximizing impact of the research that they're doing, and they would like to get it out and share with larger audiences. We are very close to finishing our seminar or our webinar. We wanted to thank everybody for joining the webinar, telling us where you come from, sharing your email address. These webinars will be archived on the website of the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems. We will also upload the PDF of the slides and share the PDF with those that left their emails with us on the chat. Terry, can you go to the next slide? I wanted to take an advantage and invite you to join for the next session on April 8th. It will be at the same time, and you will use the same Zoom link. As we will be advertising and promoting this upcoming webinar too, we will be posting a complete Zoom link so you have access to that and not have to scroll to the hyperlink presented here. The next seminar is on ORCID and friends, and we would like to conclude the webinar with this. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you, Terry, for presenting this interesting and important information.
My pleasure. I hope some people got some new information.
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye bye.